parenting gone wrong? Or maybe something else? Well, let's find out here with the IMDb plot to start. A couple rents a countryside house for a weekend with their parents and then discover it's inhabited by a 400-year-old poltergeist. All right, so is the poltergeist doing the bad parenting here? Maybe I don't know. Anyway, maybe we'll find out here shortly. This is a new film out on HBO Max. I have to say, Ed, I didn't, this is, one of the ones that kind of escaped me. I didn't know too much about it. I saw, one or two people kind of mention it in a tweet or so. But really had no clue where this movie kind of came from or what it was about or what was going on. I saw, one or two things mentioned kind of positively about it. So I was like, yeah, okay. When I came across, I'm like, okay, I remember this mentioned and it seemed to be okay. So let's hit play and see what happens. So I guess, being, fairly new here, I would try to keep it spoiler free. I think the plot there kind of told you the basics of what's going on. I don't know that there's huge twists or turns to kind of give away. But I'll try to leave stuff for you guys to see in it. I will say that this is kind of a horror comedy, so definitely not a movie that totally takes itself seriously. But it's not, doesn't overdo it with the comedy. I should say that, and does mix in some decent horror along the way. It also, before getting into it, I should say, has, maybe some cast and crew that maybe you don't know, but also maybe that you are familiar with, especially, for me, at least one set of the parents were a little bit more familiar than the others. And, one in, I'm not going to single anybody out, but in one in particular really of interest, and I will say she did a pretty good job. Not that anybody else did a bad job, but it was good to see her again. Anyway, so yeah, I think I say that about the acting overall is pretty good as well, whether you recognize the faces or not. Anyway, the movie opens in a way and kind of gave me some expectations, and then kind of went a little bit of ways and then kind of changed it up on what I expected after that. And basically the opening is a pretty funny scene where we're in the 80s. I think it's the early 80s. Yeah, I'm guessing. And you're seeing a mom in the kitchen, and she's watching the end of MASH, and she's calling her son to come to the kitchen. And I believe they're fixing dinner, or they're going to cook something or whatever. And, he's like, you're missing the end of MASH and blah, blah, what's happening. And he doesn't, totally care, whatever. But eventually comes down and, they're having some conversation. And, then she kind of opens the door, to, I believe, is the basement. And, she doesn't really notice it. But, yeah, there's something there. And, we take then the dive of the horror of the movie early on, as you see there's something there that takes her, and then it eventually takes him, and then you find out that there's a sister in the house as well, and you still get a little bit of a creepy scene with her, but eventually, she's doomed as well. So that kind of like sets the stage, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's a fun, good introduction to the movie and a good scene. So I'm like, okay, we're gonna get more of this. This is gonna be fun, whatever. But then, then we get introduced to the couple. It is a gay couple, and they've come to this house. And, both of them are, this, I think, the first time that their parents are going to meet each other. One of them is going to propose to the other while they're there. And he inadvertently tells the sister of the guy that's what he's going to do. And she accidentally tells him, via text. And, she later ends up showing up at the house because, she feels that she has to maybe save the situation, even though she can't really. And that sets up a little humor there as she tries to backtrack in what she just goofed at. Um, but yeah, it is kind of, them, getting really introduced and spending time with the others, parents, and getting the parents to meet each other in that. So obviously that's going to set up, for some comedy off the start, even if this wasn't horror, and some awkwardness, and obviously, you have, two different sets of parents that are set in their different ideas and the way they are, and so forth, and so forth. So you obviously see the ways of the comedy and what's going on there. So where's the horror of it all? That's kind of a thing that, is put off for a little bit. As we get into this introduction of the families and so forth, in happening that, and after such a, what I thought was a fun beginning, I don't know, even though the movie isn't extended, it's just over an hour and a half. I don't know, it just seemed like before we really got into the horror, it took a while. I don't know if I was just anxious and I wanted more because we had such a fun beginning, or what, but it seemed to kind of take more than I wanted it to get back to the horror of it. Interesting kind of, I think, again, being a horror comedy, they have an interesting way of kind of introducing the horror in it. I'm not going to say it, because I thought it was a unique little way to kind of say it, because, sometimes you need to, in a horror movie or whatever, you need to kind of, especially when maybe there's a spirit or whatever, you kind of need to activate it, maybe say a certain thing or whatever. And there's an interesting way that, like I said, nothing really happens to this group of people as they're kind of in this house, and to start, until a certain thing happens. And it's a very interesting, unique way of kind of, activating the horror here. And I'll let you guys kind of enjoy that, because I thought that was pretty funny. But then the horror gets activated, and let's just say the poltergeist kind of gets into one of the parents and one of the fathers here, and then proceeds to, kind of possess him at here and there, and to do and say some crazy things. And again, kind of giving you a little bit of the horror, giving you a little bit of the comedy there. And there might be a moment of creepiness that, I'm not going to say that they're not going to go over bounds to try to scare you at all. When some of the other characters kind of maybe see, some of the other ghosts that are in the house, maybe there's that small element of being scared, but nothing, over the top. It is kind of more of, this one parent kind of gets possessed, and that kind of what is going to be the driving, supernatural force here, and kind of cause some of the chaos. And, as it goes on, some of the characters here are going to be reintroduced to the characters that died in the beginning, that we all saw in the opening, and then their role in what is happening. And then you'll find out, more about this 400-year-old poltergeist, and what is happening, what happened, what, the reason for that, family at the beginning, why it happened to them, and, what is truly going on. You'll find out that later on. I'm not going to go into all that, spoil that for you guys. But, I thought overall, it was a pretty entertaining movie. Like I said, I wish they would have got to the horror a little bit more, especially at the beginning. But that was probably just me and being anxious, and, hey, I want to see more of that horror part. And it seemed like a fun opening. I maybe wanted to dive into a little bit more. But there's some really, funny moments, bizarre moments in it. I don't want to go through them all, and again, spoil any of that for you guys. I think you guys have fun watching that. There's interesting dialogue when one of the couple goes up to the door. They kind of have the father barricaded away. In there, they have a funny kind of conversation. There's funny conversation about a body part. Some humor there. Obviously, when the poltergeist takes over, there's some funny conversation there. This is not a huge blood and guts kind of movie. There is a scene or two that kind of stuff kind of happens and you think, danger's going to happen or whatever. But again, not a body count movie, not blood and gut movie and whatever. It's more about the scares and whatever. And obviously the ghost here wants something out of all this. So that's kind of the direction it's going. But I thought, the humor was never, too extreme. And I thought it was, pretty much well timed. The couple itself, they were okay. Like I said, the parents seemed to drive, at least for me, the comedy a little bit more. Definitely some awkward moments. It also played a role in it. And a very, when you eventually, kind of see what happens, like I said, it is all about activating the horror. That kind of plays a role in the finalness of it. Kind of an interesting way they go about, trying to rid themselves of it. I also say, once you should, remind you guys that if you have not seen it already, once the movie kind of ends and you think it's over and they start kind of rolling the credits, there's kind of like a small bonus scene there, which, again, kind of nails together a little bit more humor, which is kind of funny. And then kind of like, if you didn't think about it in the moment that you see it, kind of as, they kind of remind you a little bit of the ridiculousness of the situation of where the movie went, towards the end. Again, I don't want to give away any of that, but I think, it's kind of them realizing the ridiculousness of it, and then you can realize the ridiculousness of it if you didn't already. But yeah, I think this was a pleasant surprise. I enjoyed it enough. It was, like I said, it was good to see a couple of faces that I haven't seen in a while. Thought, for the most part, it was pretty, good acting, nothing terrible. Obviously the parents drove it, whatever. Again, not over scary or anything like that. They, try to maybe give you a little bit of creepiness. Really fun beginning. But and again, I don't think the movie, tried to take itself too serious and too crazy, too serious of a note, so they could kind of have some fun with it, let the humor be, and it didn't have to be, a blood and guts bath here and a super serious haunting or whatever. Just a fun movie overall. I think that, sometimes you can, you like the blood and guts, or you like, being jump scared or whatever, but sometimes you can just have a fun horror movie, and I think this is it without going, too over the top and being too stupid with it. So with that, I'm going to give it 3.5 pools of blood, and I'm happy that I took a chance and actually didn't miss this one, because it kind of almost flew under the radar for me. So hopefully, if you guys didn't know too much about it or whatever, and you're kind of seeing this or seeing me share this, whether you're watching this or not, maybe you'll be like, hey, what's that movie? And maybe you'll get a chance to catch it and maybe enjoy it as well. So again, it is on Max, but maybe it'll be, hopefully it'll have some success, and maybe it'll be more widely available at some point, so more of you guys can catch it. So with that, again, 3.5 pools of blood, and that is out of 5. So with that, horrorsgorereviews.blogspot.com is where you can find all of my reviews, written in videos, certainly tons of video reviews for quite a while now, so you can like, subscribe, and do everything else that everybody wants to do here on YouTube. If not, it is okay, no worries. I thank you for your time regardless. And Twitter, Facebook information down below, so you can reach out to me there and talk about this movie, other horror, and so forth. And definitely in the comment section, if you watched this movie, did you like it, did you not? Feel free to start a conversation there as well. So with that, I'll catch you in the next review, horror fans.